So we are still on the preview of the round of 16 of matches to be played in the African Cup of Nations. Already big names like Ghana, Algeria, Tunisia have been kicked out of the competition. And we still have countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and the Minos, who were not given, a doctor. Cape Verde, Mauritania, Equatorial Guinea are all in the competition. I have with me a colleague who works for SABC, Mazola Molefe. I've already told you that when it comes to South African names, and they are some of the best names to mention when you are running television commentary or radio. I recall names like Bulelo Mabizela.
Lovely.
I love South African names. Thanks for your time, my
Thank
brother.
you, Sheikh. Thanks for the
Um,
invitation.
yes. So far, how will you rate the level of play in this tournament and how the smaller countries have been able to, make a statement in this competition?
Well, I mean, the CAF president, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, said it himself a few months ago that this would be the best AFCON. A lot of us maybe thought he was just saying it to create hype, but I think he could already see that with the. So, in terms of what Dr. Patrice Motsepe said in the build up to the competition, he said this would be the best, and I don't think he was exaggerating at all. And I believe with the state of the pitches, the state of the stadiums, the only missing element for me maybe is to have fuller stadiums with the fans coming in. Hopefully they've sorted out the ticketing issues that have kept the fans away. But for me, this is my fourth AFCON and by far the best that I've covered and I've watched live.
Have you been, taken aback by the performance of countries like Cape Verde, Mauritania, Mozambique, even though they couldn't qualify? When you look at the level of play, how they played against Ghana, how they played against Egypt, and Equatorial Guinea, of course. How have you been surprised by their performance?
I wouldn't necessarily say surprised because I'll tell you why. A lot of the countries have been able to naturalize some of the European born players who play in top leagues in the world, ranging from the MLS to La Liga, some in England, some scattered all over Europe, so to speak. Whereas from a South African point of view, our our home affairs system is quite difficult to go that route.
Yeah.
But if you are doing it here, in other parts of the continent, it's proven easier. So by virtue of doing that, you get players that have been groomed from an early age at top world-class academies around the world. Maybe some would say it's cheating the system. Some would say it's good recruitment. It depends which
No,
side of the fence you are
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Some say it's cheating. Some say it's good recruitment to find top athletes who are Ghanaian, for instance, but are growing up in Europe and playing at the top academies. And because they can't play for that country where they're growing up, then you bring them home to play for your national team. And because of that, it shows in the quality. Look at that Cape Verde team.
Yeah.
The majority of them scattered all over Europe and in the MLS. And when they get here, the level is higher than a Mozambique team that's got locally based players, some of them playing in my own country in the Premier Soccer League in South Africa. So yes and no, I'm not. Am I surprised? Not so much. I expect that if you get the quality from all over the world from top leagues, it would show on the pitch.
But there are those who also have a contrary view, with claims that if you bring these, players born abroad to come and play for countries here in Africa, the hunger, the aggression, the determination, and the spirit of playing for African countries is not really seen. And most Ghanaians are complaining about that.
Yeah, that's true. There is an element of that because some of these guys end up choosing tournaments or choosing games. Is it Cup of Nations? Yes, I want to play in the Cup of Nations. Is it the World Cup? Yes, I want to play in the World Cup. But call him for a World Cup qualifier in Djibouti. Not interested,
Exactly.
Call him for a World Cup qualifier in the outskirts, somewhere on the African continent, not interested. But if it's a major competition, they want to be seen because they know the rest of the world is watching. Top
Exactly.
scouts, It's a stepping stone. So it's tit for tat. I guess the federation is using them to strengthen the national team. They are also using the
The
national
federation
team
is to also need.
to build their profile. So you, Sheikh, I think you take what you get.
Well, now let's come to the round of 16 of the competition. We've already mentioned the countries that have, for me, they have pulled a lot of surprises considering how they are playing. Now, if you look at the pairings, Cameroon will be coming up against, Nigeria, something that I didn't want to happen. Trust me. Then South Africa is coming up against Mali, another big game. And so when you look at the pairings, which one, in your own estimation, do you think is the biggest?
By far, Cameroon versus the Super Eagles for sure. I think that's the pick of the competition. I would have said Senegal versus the host, but you and I both know that the hosts have not delivered at this cup competition. But maybe this is an opportunity for them to step up. Obviously, they've removed the coach. Maybe they'll have a new spirit about them. They'll have a fresh idea of an approach. Maybe they'll have Sebastian Haller available once more. So let's see how that goes. But Senegal, for me, are just too strong. I think they are my favorites to defend the competition.
Well, I am asking the question, but if you are to ask me the same question, I feel that maybe in terms of name, it will be the Nigeria Cameroon game.
Of course.
But in terms of play, what do you think about Cape Verde and Mauritania?
Yes, in fact, I was saying to some colleagues just now about that Cape Verde Mauritania game. You already are guaranteed that one of the minnows, so-called minnows, will go through to the quarterfinals.
Yes.
I've I've not watched Mauritania that intensely because I've been here in Abidjan covering Group A and B. I've watched Cape Verde closely. I've interviewed a few of the Cape Verde players, and I can see the hunger in their eyes. They also grew up together. They qualified and reached the quarterfinals of the Africa Cup of
Yeah.
Nations in 2013 in South Africa.
Yes.
Some of them moved on, but some of them stayed. A guy like Ryan Mendes was a lot younger in those
At that
days,
time.
but they've since recruited from, like I said, around the world. Some of them came from the top academies. They've been
Yeah.
together for such a long time since then, and you can see in the manner in which they play that they are a team that knows each other. They've been able to also find a couple of players like Roberto Lopez, who
Yeah.
plays for Shamrock Rovers as well, and they've found a lot MLS and whatever. So for me, that's another game that we can't ignore. That you have the minnows facing off against each other, and this tournament for me can be described as a tournament of the underdogs, and it's proven that the underdogs can win. And if you already have one of them going through to the quarterfinals, who knows what could happen beyond that?
It's even possible that we can have more than one because if you look at Equatorial Guinea, are also coming up against Guinea,
Exactly.
and from the way they have played, they've also showed a lot of promise. Then Namibia, for me, coming to the tournament, I had predicted that if there's going to be a surprise at this tournament for a country that has not won it before to win it, I was tipping Namibia. I was a bit disappointed when they fell by 4 goals to South Africa. Felt they allowed too many spaces in their team for South Africa to take
Absolutely.
advantage. But they made amends in their last game and they secured qualification. So I feel that these countries that hitherto were not given, a lot of prominence when it comes to football on the continent are also showing. And so I will not be surprised because I see Namibia, I see Equatorial Guinea as well.
Yeah, no, I share the same sentiments. I think also Namibia, maybe against South Africa, they lost because they were playing against a team that knows them so well. South Africa has played against Namibia at least 10 times, and South Africa has never lost against
Yeah.
Namibia. So I think it's also a mentality issue. A lot of the players play in the same leagues, so and they are able to exploit each other's
Yeah.
weaknesses. The back four of South Africa play at Mamelodi Sundowns together, and they had Peter Shalulile, who's their striker
Yeah.
at Mamelodi Sundowns. So they were able to contain him. There were a lot of variables, mitigating factors as to why South Africa were so dominant in that performance, and South Africa needed to win. But Namibia showed what they could do against Tunisia. They held a very strong Mali, I must say. Mali are very strong, and it's one of those, as I say to you, this tournament, a lot of people have said unpredictable,
Yeah.
and I think we're still going to see more surprises.
Have you yet spotted a player in this tournament that you think that this player is a discovery of this tournament so far?
Camara for Senegal.
Okay.
We were talking about,
Lamine Camara.
yeah. I think we're talking about the succession plan for Aliou Cisse with the Senegalese team. A lot of the players have been together for a long time. They are getting older. The question was, would Aliou Cisse come to this tournament with a plan as to where he's going to get the next group of players to
Yes.
continue their dominance in African football? And you already see he's got 20-year-olds, he's got 20, 21-year-olds, 22. He's already dropping the average age because he's expecting
Yeah.
them to. And
Exactly.
and Kamara is one of those players for me that has been a shining light in that team. That if Senegal continue to progress further, he's a standout for me to perhaps even be one of the players of the tournament. And I must admit, obviously, because of we are so busy, I have not been able to watch each and every single game or each and every single team
Yeah.
that's played. But
Yeah.
with the teams reducing now, I'd be able to watch each and every single game to pick out some of the standout players.
But looking at the tournament that has been played so far, the matches that have been played, if you look at the quality of Senegal, obviously, people would think that Senegal looks like they are defending their
Yes.
title. But in the history of the AFCON, that seemed to be a bit difficult. I think after 2010, when Egypt defended winning the title from 2006, 2008, and 2010, no country has been able to win it back to
Back to
back
back.
again. Do you think Senegal will be able to make this feat?
I believe so. You look at their trajectory in this competition. When Aliou Cisse took over, his first AFCON was a bit of a disaster. Came back the next one, reached the final, losing to Algeria in 2019, and then progressing to the next one in Cameroon, winning that one, beating Egypt. And if you look, the World Cup, maybe not what we had expected from a Senegal team, but having kept the job and kept the core of the team, you can see that it's possible. And Egypt, when they did that, it was a pretty similar
Exactly. They had consistency in the team, the
consistency in the team,
technical team,
no
and
changes, not trying to fix what's not broken. And the FA in Senegal, they must be commended for doing that with Aliou Cisse. And I can see there's a resemblance of what Egypt did in that time that Senegal quite possibly could do that. But knockout competition is also strange. You don't need to be at your best to win it. You could get a VAR decision go your way
exactly.
or go against you and progress in the last minutes of the game without having been the best team.
That's very true. Now, if you look at the teams that have been kicked out so far, um, the big guns, Algeria, Tunisia, Ghana, Egypt escaped by a whisker. Which of the teams that have gone home will really surprise you that, wow, they are really going?
Algeria, I think. Ghana, because of the record of not winning games in the group stages of the AFCON, I suppose didn't really come as a surprise. I think they need to shake that off
Yeah.
in the coming weeks, depending on which way they're going to go with the appointing a new coach. But Algeria, the 2019 champions, you'd think having done so well a few years ago, and obviously maybe their squad is getting old as well.
Yeah.
They've not refreshed enough, and now the coach has been sacked as well. So I think that's one of the biggest surprises for me. I think, and if you look at their group, by their standards, it wasn't really a tough group. They had Angola, they had Burkina Faso. So for me, really, it wasn't such a tough group that you would. When the draw came out, you and I would have never predicted that
Of course.
Algeria would finish bottom of that group and go home. They didn't even get an opportunity to sneak in as third.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
So
That's
for me,
amazing.
that's perhaps the biggest upset of the tournament.
The Ghana coach is gone. Christian was sacked about 3 days ago.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of names coming up as to who to succeed him.
Yeah.
And, South African Pitso Mosimani's name has also popped up.
Yeah.
How is the news, turning around in South Africa?
Look, Coach Peter Musimani's camp has said that their intention is to see him stay in the Gulf region. He wants to build his reputation there. But as the South African Football Journalists Association, we've had an exclusive interview a few weeks ago, a few months prior, building up to the AFCON, where we spoke to Coach Pito. At the time, his name was also linked to the Super Eagles job as well. The one thing he was clear about is that he would love to coach a national team at some point, especially with the World Cup qualifiers now in ongoing,
Yeah.
and perhaps a team. And I think he knew that at the end of the AFCON, some coaches are going to get sacked. It's
Of course.
inevitable that is the case. When you underperform, the FAs quickly move on.
Yeah.
Coach Pito still wants to coach at the World Cup. He's not had that opportunity. Obviously, he was an assistant coach when South Africa hosted in 2010, and after that, he became the coach. But he didn't last too long to be able to guide them to the next World Cup. So he hasn't had an opportunity to be at that level. With his coaching pedigree now, with his pro license as well, he fits the criteria. But what's important, Coach Musimani wants to come with his army of assistant coaches and
Yes.
analysts. So you are talking about maybe a seven-man team. Is the Black Stars ready for that change, where a coach comes in and he brings his entire staff, and makes his own decisions in terms of who is sitting with him in the dugout? If they are not, then Coach Peter Musimani is not their man.
If you are just connecting, we are speaking to Mazola Molefe, a colleague who works for SABC in South Africa. Mazola, thank you very much for your perspective, and
So thank you so much.
you are deep insight of African football. We really appreciate.
Thank you so much, my brother.
All the
I
best.
appreciate it.
Agosia, yeah,
You're good.